Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrii Degeler. I am a journalist and podcaster, and I'm very happy to be talking today with Jānis Sārts. So, Jānis, before we dive into the conversation, the headline of which you can all see behind us, can you introduce yourself and tell more about what it is that you're actually doing?
Well, my name is Jānis Sārts. I'm here in Riga, leading the team that works on the issues of how to defend in information warfare times. Our role is to understand what it takes to win, to help to build the capability, and also a big part of what we do is understand how tech plays into that environment and how technology both creates opportunities and vulnerabilities in the societies and during the information war times.
So I guess this is what we are having right now as well going on in Ukraine, the war that's also being fought on information and on technology. So what is, do you think, how would you describe the role that technology is playing right now in this particular war that Russia started in Ukraine?
Well, let's first start that the takeaway we have from now the war in Ukraine is how important the information piece in the war is. Napoleon once famously said, morale to physique is 3-1. So the will to fight is really, really incredibly important. And if you don't win this fight in the information space, if you don't win this fight for minds of people, then you lost your war. And the information these days is about technologies. Yes. Media have some role, but technologies, and well, I think those who follow through the war, you know how Telegram has been important, how YouTube has been informing you the way, what is happening, and etc. And that is where I think the new battle space for information war that is critical to the outcomes of war is happening.
Right, and in the preparations to this conversation, when we had our call earlier, you said that you have obviously been looking at the situation since the year 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea and started the conflict in the east of Ukraine. So how has it been developing from your communication and technology warfare point of view?
Well, there are two things. First thing is that technology is more and more important. Unfortunately, what we've been telling, our own Western technology companies have allowed Russia and likes to use the freedoms we've developed in our democratic societies to fight against us in the information space. Yet, now when we see the war happening in Ukraine, what I can say is Ukraine has won information war in Ukraine and in the West. And why? And that's where I think there's a promising element also for the way that we approach the technology ecosystem, is that Russia has been running their operation like a vertical, like pyramid. Top down, you're told what to do. We see the same on the battlefield. Ukrainians, contrary, have run a network-centric operation where it's not like somebody tells you what to do, what to show online, what not to show online, but actually there is a clear idea where you want as a society to go, and everybody's trying to give their kind of bits and pieces. I love this story about how Ukrainian women in the early days of a war used Tinder in a smart way, actually having, I think, 3 profiles, running 3 profiles, which was the specific GPS locations through VPNs, and by getting the amount of the Russian soldiers kind of and the distance, how far they are.
So they triangulated.
Exactly, and then giving it full fire support. Which is a kind of interesting way to do that, but in a way that's idea how you can, because it's network, it's the society, it's people, it's not like only the leaders. Of course, leaders like Zelensky help.
Yeah. So you say that Ukraine has won now, but was it the same in 2014? Was it the case? Why not? What's changed?
Well, I think what's the difference is we've seen what Russians are doing. We've been preparing. Ukraine has been preparing. And although, of course, I can't say that I'm very happy, because if you look at the Russian information space, I'm really kind of depressed. How far we're back into the 1984 of George Orwell. And I actually, if anybody hasn't read that book, I say that's a must read these days, like absolutely important. So what we've seen in these days is that Russia has a lot of options when they have initiative in the information space. But effectively what we've seen also with US campaign strategic communication in the run-up, they took away this initiative, and then this mass, and the last piece is, which is very important, is that this war is fought in social media. Like, I think for people that follow the war, basically, although like here in Latvia, we're pretty far away from it, but we feel it. And that's because it's through social media the way we get what is happening from Ukrainians, friends, former acquaintances, and that resonates in a different way than a war that you just see on a front page of a newspaper. That's a different kind of buy-in that we see that Russians have not prepared for.
Yeah. You know, when the war just started in the first couple of weeks, I was still in Ukraine, and one of the things that we were doing with a friend of mine, we were putting together a small script that everyone could build into their website that would detect anyone entering the website from a Russian IP address, and they would show them a special kind of pop-up with some information, like, this is how you can learn what's going on in Ukraine. And we thought that if we do this, if people actually like get access to this information, to the truthful information, things will change. We stopped harboring this illusion pretty quickly. Things are not changing even if you do provide this sort of access to the Russian-speaking population in Russia. How does the West and Ukraine win this kind of war for the Russian-speaking population then? Are there ways at all, in your opinion?
Well, as I've said, I feel depressed when I see what is happening, because basically why I refer back to George Orwell's book is because war is peace, evil is good, black is white. Like, you know, awarding a special award to this brigade, 64th,
yeah.
Now the honorary title of Guards Brigade, the one that committed atrocities in Bucha, is basically saying evil is good. And what is really surprising me, that still in the 21st century we have societies that go in that path. So unfortunately there I'm pretty pessimistic. There are a few parallels in history. One is that, well, Germany post-Second World War. And it took a real strong self-reckoning within a society to come in terms with what has happened and their responsibilities. And I'm not sure whether we'll be able to see it in the same way in Russia. Well, probably, but I'm not really sure. So therefore, we have to kind of, one of the scenarios is we still have this society, one form or another, next to our borders. And that, of course, is a dangerous neighbor.
Yeah, and this is definitely not something that could happen during the war itself.
No,
this sort of self-reckoning.
There are some elements, like, you know, soldiers that are returning, and like, if you have had any experience in the military, these soldiers are really been put by their commanders in very bad places. Like, they're not meant to survive. But even then, I'm starting to become more skeptical whether they will be able to bring the shift of the way people in Russia perceive what is happening.
At the same time, I was very happy to see the resilience of Ukrainian communication system in terms of infrastructure and everything, because I think right now, wherever there is power, there is internet access, which really helps.
Well, true, and that I'm proud of their work, because of course we've been supporting them for years, and they've really showed up during the crisis. But I think there is one larger takeaway that we have to really understand, especially for the crowd here, is that increasingly technology scene and technologies is a battleground. It is a place where battle also takes place. So if we think about social media, that's where the battle is happening. If we think about internet as such is increasingly element of war. And from a good side, if we continue to have internet in the way and form that we cherish, free, without the borders and etc., it delivers for us. But we have to recognize on the other side, they want to crush that kind of internet. And there's close correlation between availability of the internet on occupied territories and the level of atrocities that have been committed. So even to such a level that if there is an internet, atrocities are lower. If there is no internet, the more. So that's also where we have to really rethink that, the way we think about the technologies.
Yes, absolutely. And what you mentioned at the beginning, that Russia has been basically weaponizing the Western internet in a way. So how do you fight this? How do because you can't censor anymore, because this is the core value of the democratic society, this free internet, but at the same time it could be used against us by a player like Russia. So where is the balance here? What do you do here?
Well, I think there are two things. First, and that's I think also back to the values set, is when you build a product, you're responsible that this product is good for your customer. And I'm afraid to say that many of the Western social media companies have not gone through on that value set. Because, for instance, we as a center, we run a number of times, now third time it's just out, how well the Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok are resisting the robotic network manipulation. Now, third year in a row, if we try out how much of the bot activity that we buy gets through their filters, it's 90% gets through. And so, do we say that the bots that are kind of run by the Kremlin proxies?
You literally buy bots from Russia.
Yeah. And then we try out, and then of course we're not like labeling, Stratcom COE all over it, but we're trying to get, and yeah, it all goes through. And that means that the technology companies have not really taken due care. And therefore, instead of, we don't really need to talk about the individual freedom that will be, we need to be talking about the responsibility of the companies, because bots, inauthentic accounts, all of those things, if we take them away, it would be far more difficult for the Russian voices. Like right now, look at how Margarita Simonyan gets across all the boundaries. I'd say if there would be just one little Margarita Simonyan's account, okay, I would have ethical questions, but like, okay, in some cases I would imagine. But then all the bots, all the technology to make it spread, to infiltrate and all of that, it's all inauthentic, it's manipulation. Yet it is available. So that's where it is responsibility of our own tech companies. But of course, also what I would add, we now kind of pre-assume all the companies would be Western. Mm-hmm. In 5 to 10 years, it might not be the case. So we would have potentially a next level of issue is where, like when we look at Vkontakte, for first 2 weeks, Ukrainians still to try to get into with their own information. Yeah. But at some point, they just took control, and everything that is being seen on Vkontakte is controlled by Kremlin.
It's very much fenced out.
Exactly. And now, do we still continue to believe that everybody that produces a technology where we as a West exchange ideas, do democratic argument in between each other, can come in and do something? I think it's too dangerous. I think we need to set up some rules. If you want to come to a democratic market and be the one that carries this conversation on your own platform, you have to meet the rules. And it's not the case right now.
But at the same time, the way that things are progressing, what I am seeing is that I think Russia is going to be less and less interested even in getting into the Western social network democratic discussion space. They are totally fine with fencing everything out and being the North Korea and having this internet of their own. What's even the point now thinking about it?
No, I think, of course, their primary primary effort is within Russian speaking, but if they could, and if they will have a chance, they'll try to go at us. They'll try to poke at our own vulnerabilities. Second thing, we should not mistake this as just a Russian issue. I think what we have to recognize, that's it. The last 30 years of relative peace have gone. We're in for the time of systemic competition / conflict between the systems, democracy and autocracy. And that is where we have to see a wider picture. There's also an element of China. It's not like in the same, it's not as aggressive, they don't have the same agenda. But we have to recognize that technology will be a battleground. And the times as we saw it as a global village are gone. That's it. Full stop.
And what does it mean in practice, and particularly what does it mean, for example, for the ecosystems, for local ecosystems, for regional ecosystems, for entrepreneurs in general? What are the consequences for them?
Well, it's of course not that easy right now to tell exactly what would be the consequences, but clearly I'd say, because I would also say governments will increasingly recognize that for the battleground. There will be new sets of rules, I think, established. Sooner or later, governments are not really that tech savvy to do it quickly, but they'll come along at some point. Second, tech will be seen in terms of power. Tech is an opportunity. That's the way we see it. Tech is a possibility for new options. But increasingly, tech will be seen as a leverage and as a power, and especially a number of core technologies. And therefore, we will have to foresee that there will be a kind of a battle in between the systems, more or less visible, but sometimes under the carpet. And the environment will be not, doing a business in Russia, a little bit business in Russia or China, and then going back to somewhere, I don't know, to US and etc. I think that will not be an option anymore. You'd have to choose sides at some point.
So, and what does it mean in practice? Does it mean that we will indeed still, what I said before, we're going to have separate platforms for everything? I'm not talking about social media platforms per se, but also everything from, I don't know, payments to whatever other platforms businesses and people could use.
Well, let's put it this way. Now, China has created their big wall around them, and
Yes.
Russia has missed the opportunity, but trying to do the same. So I don't think by trying to create walls is the right response for us as the democracies, because it's contrary to the way we are, the way we think about things. Yet, what I think is missing is rules. I don't think that we could say, okay, you're from China, therefore you're not allowed in our market. That's the wrong way around it. I think we have to have rules. If you want to be in a market, you have to follow these rules that enable democratic value sets and the things that we believe in, and do not disrupt us. And that is where I think the core element of that will be. But certainly the competitive / conflict element will be growing in that exchange.
Well, this is something that sounds very European thing to say, just because we are often accused by our American peers of having too many rules, including on the internet. So why do you think that these rules will be actually adopted universally across the Western societies?
Well, I've been talking to the US, to the Senate and Congress and government now for 4 or 5 years on these issues, and I've sensed the real shift. But I think the core shift will be the recognition that basically that's it. As I've said, we're in the time of competition/conflict, and we have to see the technology as one part of it. And I think US already is kind of there. Europe is now kind of catching up in that understanding. But what is missing in that is that it's not only by limiting access to the market, that you have to also make sure that technologies, and like think about big data and AI as they kind of develop and the capacity to impact society, it cannot be left like open. Because the options and some of our experimentation, what can big data micro-targeting achieve with human behavior are pretty kind of worrying. There will have to be sets of rules how these new technologies correspond to the freedom, to the concept of freedom of free will of individual and freedom of speech and choice. The things that we've always taken, okay, that's it, that's how we are and only other humans can take away. Increasingly, that will be also technology that will have that option. And as I see, for instance, China investing in these options, and I don't think that we can always, like, let's say, okay, we'll see where this technology leads us. And we have already a good example from the social media where, you know, they've led our societies at points in not the best not the best places.
Yes, I understand. Jānis, this is all we have time for. Jānis Sārts, thank you so much for providing these insights into what the current situation can mean for the technology ecosystem globally and what this war in Ukraine means for the communication and the paradigms that we live in the digital society. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening and good luck.
Thank you, Andrii.